welcome to our discussion around 2023 marketing outlook and trends. So I think we have a great panel for you today. Excited to have you all here. Thank you for coming. I think the standard thing to say at this point is we are the next half hour between you and cocktail hour, so we will try to make it as educational, informative, and fun as we can. But I think before we jump into questions, I know we got the intros, appreciate that. We'll just go through quickly, just so everyone knows. I'm Traci Mason, Vice President of MGM, and on the brand marketing side, and hopefully you all are enjoying our lovely resort here, the Cosmopolitan, so welcome. And then we'll go down the line here.
Okay, so is this on? 1, 2. Cool. My name is Alex Erlmeier. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Outbrain since October, but not new to the industry, 25 years in and 10 years with Outbrain.
Hi, I'm Dan Levi, Chief Marketing Officer of Clear Channel Outdoor. We're one of the largest outdoor advertising companies in the world. Happy to be here.
I'm Anthony Flaccavento, the General Manager of Ogury. Been with the company since September of 2022. And we are a global organization with 500 employees in 15 countries.
Excellent. Well, thank you to the three of you. First question, Anthony, is going to be for you. What evolving and shifting consumer behaviors are you seeing that we as marketers need to account for?
Yeah, appreciate that. So it's funny, Traci and I had a long conversation outside, and we kept talking about data and we kept talking about privacy and how important that was, and ultimately having respect for the consumer and putting them in a situation where there was a value exchange. And the trends that we're seeing is, and it started back in 2021, that marketers are going to have to be more mindful of the signal loss that's happening with mobile advertising and in advertising in general. So one of the things that we're really keeping our eye on as the personified advertising company is how are marketers thinking about reaching audiences at scale without cookies and IDs, and how is that trend going to impact the market as we get into 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's something we're all very familiar with and dealing with at this point. Something I'll add to that too, on an unrelated to that topic note, I know from my perspective, we saw consumers so eager to come back to our resorts last year, coming out of the pandemic. It was really like the floodgates opened. I mean, we had to adjust to make sure we could accommodate all of the demand, and from a marketing perspective, be ready to quickly take advantage of that demand and that additional traffic coming in. We knew was going to come back full force, but it came back even stronger than ever. So I think those are the kind of things we're always just trying to be agile to and think about. But good problem to have too, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like travel, and you heard the influx of travel across once COVID started to loosen up. But the non-essential purchasing patterns of consumers and their ability or willingness to spend beyond just the essential day-to-day products they needed was super explosive in terms of whether it's luxury items or whether it was the nice-to-haves, things that might have gone beyond their regular expenditures. And I think that trend is probably going to continue for a few more months, but with the economy in a certain way that it is, consumers might pull back a little bit. So that's why it's going to be really important to continue to stay present and top of mind, especially from a branding perspective, because when they start to tighten the belt, you want to make sure that the most premium brands and the best-in-class brands are getting the attention that they need.
I just jumping in what you said before about signal loss and changes to privacy and access to cookie data and things like that. I love how you characterize that as respecting the consumer, and I actually think it's a short-term pain that long-term will be a benefit for all of us. Because if you think about, just respectfully, and I'm a marketer in the media industry for 35 years, some of the things that we've done with data as an industry aren't necessarily what consumers think is going on with data. Like we always talk about, like if you tell your mom what you're doing with data and she goes, oh, that's creepy, you're probably not doing the right thing with the data. So I think we all have to work through a transition, which is certainly going to become more urgent this year, but I think it will get us as an industry to a stronger position because we will have greater trust with consumers and greater transparency with consumers.
Yeah, I think the respect of the user will get much closer in the center of every advertiser. And what we do at Outbrain, we also do surveys, obviously, when we see consumer shifts, going back to your question, right? What shifts do we see in consumer behaviors? And what we saw is since end of 21 till around September 22, we saw a 50% increase in clicks on the word recession. And with the rising cost of living, etc., we do see that there is a consumer shift. We see consumers in the consideration phase being more, especially frugal shoppers, being way more attentive and exploring what they are buying. But on the other hand, once they are buying, they are more loyal customers. So there's definitely a shift in such a macroeconomic environment.
Yep. All great points. Thank you all for sharing that. Okay, we'll move on to our next question. It's a broad one. So what are some opportunities and challenges facing us marketers for 2023? Alex, do you want to tackle this one first?
That's a biggie. I would say 2023, I would say right now my word of 2023 is uncertainty. And that comes from the consumer. I think the consumer, there's no firm sentiment, confidence in the market, how everything will evolve. We see it, advertising spenders, big firms, like having been several months ago, still very bullish and now pulling more and more back here on the spend. So an uncertainty means play it safe. And if you ask me, 23, with such an uncertainty around, and marketers don't know how they, are you sure that your hotel guests will arrive and after the pandemic as much as they want and going out, but will they have the money or the confidence to spend money on that? So in such an environment, my prediction, basically 4 points, I would say, where we are, that we also identified as opportunity. Every challenge has an opportunity, obviously. One is playing safe. That's always what happens in such times. We saw it in the pandemic. Now, basically, it's kind of coming back. That means that probably advertisers will outweigh short-term over long-term, so more performance than branding. It's a very tricky one, I would say. We are fine with that. We are very known for a very strong performance channel. But is it the long-term strategy? It's a different question, probably another question for today. But so it's the performance. Then the other thing is we will see growth in digital marketing. That's great, but it's not going everywhere. So retail media definitely will be one of the big benefiters of such an environment. The other thing is video that will grow in single-digit numbers. That's something we are also very bullish about. We acquired a company called Video Intelligence, integrating that. And so video is a growth area for us, definitely. Then the third thing, what we probably will see is a flight to quality that on the one hand, the consumers will be more demanding what intrusiveness they will accept, etc. And the advertisers will want the advertisers will want a more secure environment and want to have better measurements and attention, especially. So it's not enough anymore to provide viewability. So it will be, we'll see more impact, demand of impact, and advertisers demanding that from partners where they are. And then as a fourth opportunity I can see in such an environment where data is becoming more critical, going away, where we are changing how we target with contextual and such signals, that is a good opportunity also for traditional publishers to be back in the game, contextual signals, etc. And having here, taking this challenge as an opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to add on a couple of things there. First, in terms of those trends and flight to quality, I think quality is everything, and the quality is, in the quality of the media, but the quality of the creative, and the quality of the data. And I think marketers are, and they have been for a while, becoming more and more discerning in terms of the partners they choose, because they do want to make sure that they're working in best in breed, whatever the discipline may be, whether it's out of home or whether it's performance or whether it's branding, like Ogury. For our perspective, we focus mainly on branding, so I'll have to, collaborate with you on that in terms of the balance between performance and branding. But we believe that as some brands, maybe e-commerce rooted brands or brands that might be struggling with signal loss or not finding the right attribution balance on their sales, or more competitors coming into the market or copycatting them, they're going to have to go up the funnel to branding in order to make an impact and stand out. Because if the sales aren't there in a soft economy, in order to stay relevant for the long game, they're going to have to make sure that brand is built and relevant and something that stands for something. So I actually think that branding will have its day for sure in 2023, mainly because the currency we trade in right now is attention. And if you get people's attention, you can build a brand.
So as billboard guy on the stage, I love this discussion about branding because that's what billboards have always been used. Like, Traci, your business uses it all the time, right? There's so many brands that have been built with out of home. What's interesting hearing you guys talk about this is it's not literally a playbook, but effectively the playbook for DTC brands over the last few years. Performance marketers that are built primarily around identifying signals on the web, on social media that indicate that someone is interested in a specific product and focusing on that kind of performance marketing. What typically ends up happening with so many of the DTCs, typically around the C round, is they realize that they've squeezed that performance marketing lemon as much as they can, and they can't get more performance out of the social networks and things like that. So what do? They turn to branding. They turn to brand building. They go more for the top of the funnel. That's where out of home comes in. That's when you see Casper go from an online only brand to having storefronts, right? So I actually think the dynamic between branding and performance, no disrespect to all of us marketers who like talking about that, I think it's a faulty, kind of flawed distinction, because you have to think about both. If all you do is focus on grinding out performance, you're going to reach a point where you don't have a business growth anymore. If all you focus on is branding without clarity on how you lead to that conversion, you're building a good brand, but you're not going to have a good business. So I actually like sitting in the middle of you guys on this. So.
Well, it's funny you say that the dynamic there changes, because you talk to a lot of marketers and they'll tell you that the marketing funnel's dead, right? Because it isn't one or the other. It's both, and it both depending on a lot of different things and a lot of variables. So I'm in line with you, Dan. One of the things that I'd like to say, though, in terms of that, and we did see this a few years ago with DTC brands as they kind of struggled to find those new audiences. You look at even with, we're in Vegas, so we'll talk a little bit about gaming. Somebody like a DraftKings, their cost per acquisition went from like $100 to like $2,000. That's not sustainable over time, right? And then you have to basically start to build a brand, and there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of better competitors out there, perhaps, or a lot of other brands who offer, different services or more robust services, perhaps hotels to stay at and casinos to play in, not just online experiences. So my point there is, we've already seen this trend happening. I think in 23 it gets accelerated for sure.
Yeah, and I love that we're all passionate about these topics, because you guys are jumping ahead to some of our other questions, so we can dig in further, I'm sure. But going back to performance marketing versus brand building and how we all find that balance. Obviously, we know performance is critical in driving the day-to-day business, but if you're not constantly focused on building your brand, you lose sight of that and what it means to your consumers. And so it's really important to find that balance. So if any of you want to expand on maybe how you would advise marketers to continue to find that balance. Anything to add other than what we started talking about already?
So first of all, it's very, very crucial that there is a balance. And as I said before, in this time of uncertainty, I could see it going, again, a bit out of balance. But we also have seen in the pandemic that brands actually that played it very safe and doubled down on performance and cut down their branding budgets, they lost market share, right? And that's very dangerous. That was very short-sighted, and they got the bill for it. And so I hope this learning still exists right now. And if you ask me, like, how do you find the right balance? I mean, there's the magic number, the rule of thumb, 60% of your budget in the budget planning. That's how it starts, right? So 60% of your budget should be in branding long term, and 40% should be on the performance side. This for B2C brands, and having here the right allocation of the budget is very important. The other thing, what I do see, is that sometimes branding and performance in companies do work in silos, and that's always very dangerous. And working with integrated teams, I think that's a very important part of keeping this right balance and not getting out of balance here. And the next thing definitely is respecting the user, being relevant, and that's I mean, we are living. Let's face it. Most users, most consumers don't like ads, but a brand needs ads to survive. Otherwise, he will be just a product, not a brand. And how can you still cut through here, being not intrusive, respect the user, and still start up in the funnel that you are ahead of the game when it comes to the conversion, and that's a very important objective for advertisers.
So just building on that, we're all marketers, and we like talking about the marketing funnel and conversions, and it's always about driving people to that point of sale, or that point of transaction, that point of conversion. But we all know consumers don't think that way, right? They don't think in terms of funnels. They think in terms of brands and engagements and experience. And so if you think about the consumer experience today, people are more mobile than ever. They're all connected 24/7 with the smartphone in their hand, and they've been trained just behaviorally to respond to the world around them. So I like to think about it not as focusing on a point of sale or a point of transaction or a point of conversion. I like to think about point of decision, because brands and consumers have those opportunities throughout the journeys to engage with each other. And so when a consumer is going about their daily journey, whatever that involves, and gets exposed to a brand message, that's an opportunity for them to make a decision about whether they're going to respond or engage with that brand or not. And whether they engage by going to a search engine and finding out more information, or going to the brand's URL, or scanning a QR code, or taking a photo and putting up an Insta, there's those points where there's an opportunity for a brand to deepen a relationship. And so when it comes to this question about performance or branding, I think the answer has to be to think about the journey and the opportunities that may not necessarily be upper, middle, or lower funnel opportunities, but are more holistically about how do you build that brand relationship, and do it in a way where you have the signals, the intelligence to understand when you're getting that person closer to that point where the decision they're making happens to be one that's transactional in nature.
No, I love that you said the mobile journey, because Ogury and our personified advertising is built on such rich data from mobile journey data. And that data really gives you a snapshot of the journey a person takes on a day-to-day basis, and all of the interests that they have based on the mobile websites they visited or the apps that they've interacted with. And by having that information and enriching it with new interest data, and pairing it with media placements that are relevant both from an interest perspective, a contextual perspective, and a semantic perspective, with creative that could actually get someone's attention and being fully in view and making an impact at the point of interaction, that's the value. And that's what we see as personified advertising. We see the ability to reach personas at scale in the right place at the right time, based on their interest and the media that they consume. And that's how you strike that balance, I think.
And so again, billboard guy, we don't have the ability to do dynamic creative optimization, right? So in our world, the optimization from a creative standpoint is somewhat kind of softer science. We've got a creative team that's got decades of experience in doing this, and it's also tied to performance measurement. So one of the things that we try and do is we provide insights to our customers throughout the campaign to help them, among other things, understand, is your message resonating with the audience that you're actually reaching, and what do we learn from those engagements and that response that we're seeing that we can help the brand better optimize that message. And obviously it's easier with digital out of home because you can literally change it in minutes. But even with traditional printed billboards, we have clients where I'm sorry, our head of analytics is over there. We're running a program right now with a CPG brand where we're providing them with weekly insights into their campaign. That's not about media selection. It's not about optimization of performance. It's about optimization of creative. And what are they learning from performance, and what can they do to change their creative? That's the kind of thing that I think, again, bridges the gap between the traditional performance media and traditional branding media. It's the ability to measure and have those insights to be able to do that kind of customization and personalization, whether that's dynamic in the world that you operate in, or a little bit slower in our world, but with a greater impact.
But I'd say in either way, innovation and technology is enabling you to do it quicker than you used to. It's enabling us to do it better and quicker than we used to, right? So that innovation.
And ideally, in a way where the brand isn't looking at it in channels or in silos, but is thinking holistically. Because again, consumers don't think about channels or silos of media types. They think about the stuff that they see and the brands that they're exposed to and the ads that they don't like seeing and all that stuff. By the way, they like billboards.
I look at billboards as pure entertainment. You drive past it, you see something, it's relevant, it speaks to you.
I'm biased, but I appreciate it.
We love
It's
our
true.
billboards here in Las Vegas. I'm sure you've all noticed.
We do as
Been in
well.
town.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, Dan.
We
I'm
appreciate the
sure.
business.
But to your point, I mean, advertising, like, yeah, some consumers are not receptive, right? Maybe they still have like pain in their soul from a pop-up ad 25 years ago. But like at the end of the day, as long as there's value and as long as there's some form of entertainment, they see it as content if it's relevant. And that's why the contextual environment is so important. And the moment in time in which their mind is right to accept that ad is so important.
Yeah, I love this conversation around customer journey and the importance of understanding that, right? But not just understanding it, doing the work as marketers to get them through it and not relying on consumers to take some of those steps themselves, right? Like we can do, I think, so much more sometimes to really get them there if we fully understand that journey and are willing to put in the work to do it. So love that. Love that. Okay, next question. I think it kind of builds on this. So many marketers are looking for these full funnel solutions. What advice would you give them in terms of where to start? Dan, do you want to take this one to start?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I can take this one on first because, out of home has traditionally been seen as an unmeasurable medium. And that's not correct, just to be clear. We've spent, as an industry, and Clear Channel especially, has been leading an effort to bring data and analytics into the world of traditional out-of-home advertising, offline media, connecting offline brand experiences with online measurement and data. And so one of the things that we advise our customers to do is not think in terms of silos. When we went down the path of starting to provide measurement, the question was always, did it work or not? And that's great because we love being able to prove to our customers that their campaign with us was effective. But just like consumers don't think in terms of channels, marketers may plan their budgets in terms of channels, but they're thinking business performance. And so what we're trying to do these days is get people to think about measurement holistically and think about not does out-of-home work or not, but how does out-of-home work and how does it drive overall performance for a brand and for a business in an environment where, let's be honest, the business is being driven predominantly by mobile, digital, social, search. So what we're doing is looking at, yes, effectiveness of out-of-home, but in the context of that broader mix. There was a study that ComScore released last year where they looked at a range of traditional linear media types and digital media types. And they looked at those media types' ability to drive digital behavior, search, sharing, posting, things like that. But ComScore, for the first time, what they did is they looked at that in the context of how much money is spent on those media. So in other words, they were answering the question, dollar for dollar, what media is most efficient in driving digital behavior? And I obviously wouldn't be telling you about this if out-of-home wasn't the number one medium. in this study. And I think that makes sense because you think about what you guys were talking about in terms of consumers don't necessarily like advertising or they have some bad advertising experiences. But also, I think it's the context of how out of home is consumed. And just be honest, you see a billboard ad, you've got a phone in your hand, in your pocket, in your purse, or on the seat next to you in the car. And so we've created an environment through the combination of mobility, mobile devices, and the pervasiveness of out of home where consumers have that ability to respond. And so we definitely see, not just from a ComScore study, we see through our own research that we do with our brands that out of home drives digital conversion, digital behavior. It's not just brand surveys, it's not just recall and awareness, and things, all of which are really important. But we're at a point right now where we have the ability to measure upper, middle, and lower funnel KPIs. What we don't do is go to brands and say we should measure conversions. We go to the brand and say, tell us about your business. What are the challenges? What media are you buying? How are you measuring your media across those media channels? And then what we'll oftentimes do is work with the same data set, same analytics providers that are measuring their mobile, their digital, or social, because we don't want to be seen over here in that silo. We want them to understand that, yes, it works, but it makes the business perform even better. That's thinking about it holistically is probably the biggest advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it when you say it, context. That's, the user, again, it doesn't care where he is in the funnel. And, but we care what is the right context. So we have every day, we display 11 billion recommendations. So that means we know exactly throughout the day which context resonates best with the user. And that means, for example, when I wake up in the morning, we know how users behave, resonate with which news channels or not news channels. Then during lunchtime, you're not alone anymore. You're alone at home maybe, but you're not just eating lunch. You are with screen and consuming news. And here you have a totally different reception, or willing to for a certain reception. In the evening, for example, you are way more likely to engage deeper with content. And throughout all these contexts that we know, we target and find out what is the right moment. I mean, which part of the funnel is the right to target you at this moment, at this very special context throughout your day.
One of the things about being in the mobile space and being so connected with the mobile data that we share and how we create personas is you also realize that the mobile device, whether you're walking past a billboard or whether you're listening to the radio or whether you're second screening while you're watching broadcast television or CTV, is the one device that is with you in all of those other events. And the ability to connect in a contextually relevant way with the right message in that moment or shortly thereafter is really powerful. And that's how you really build awareness and how you can get the proper attention for your brand. So I think all complementary avenues, and I think that's what makes us have have the ability here to have a meaningful dialogue because we come at it from different perspectives. But I think the opportunity is endless. Moving into 2023, one of the things that I would like to leave any marketer in here is to really think about how are you using data, creative, and insights to solve your business problems. Because to Dan's point earlier, somebody will try to sell you performance, somebody will try to sell you branding, but not everybody's trying to solve your problem. And I think up here we talked about context, problem, and solution. And I think if you think about it through the lens of data, creative, and insights, you'll really be in a solid place to have great business results.
I think that
I'm sorry, Tracy. Just one thing I would just want to build off of Anthony was saying about the mobile device being pervasive. It's another thing to think about on this, where if you kind of zoom out on it, the smartphone, in my opinion, is the first ever truly personalized ad medium. Right, and what I mean by that is that TV is a TV, right? You watch TV, you look at your browser, you, back in the day, read the newspaper. But it's not the phone, it's my phone, right? I have an iPhone 14. If any of you guys have an iPhone 14, we put them next to each other, exact same hardware, and would look completely different because it's my device. And you're gonna shove ads in my device? I think that's one of the reasons why consumers have some challenge with mobile advertising, which is why it's so important, as you're saying, to make sure that their context and the creative are relevant. Why do search and social media drive more performance on mobile than traditional mobile web? It's because it's personalized. It's tied to what your interests are and what your behavior is. Whereas mobile web is just throwing ads at you based on third-party data and things like that. So I think it's important that marketers consider that consumer experience and think about mobile as just fundamentally, I fully agree with you, that's the linchpin between everything.
Yep.
But you have to respect the fact that a consumer sees that device differently than any other ad medium.
I think in the future, with a cookieless and ID-less future ahead of us, you have no choice but to respect it, because then you will not be effective. So we're in a really good place for that.
And with that, I think that's going to be our last comment we can leave with you all, because we are being told to wrap it up. This went by so fast, guys. I think we got through half of our questions, but let's open it up if you all are open to it. Yeah.
So we heard consumers don't like advertising, see advertising. We've heard that the funnel is shrunk. It's no longer top of funnel, bottom of funnel. So we have used to be big with buckets, cable, linear. Now we have CTV, we have display, we have mobile. In terms of the marketplace moving forward in a progressive way, my question is to you, Dan. When you think about what you said up there and what you guys said, like, just start with the fact that people don't like ads. Out of home is the most photographed ad medium in the world by consumers, right? You are top of funnel. Everybody wants reach, right? And reach drives awareness. And you've got the highest reach. Maybe you and radio right up there. You've got the analytics. Bottom of funnel as it relates to performance. As you said, you can't do performance all the time. So you've got that blend of reach, awareness, performance, brand safety, and consumers actually photographing ads, right? Is the marketplace catching up to that holistic view of out of home as it relates to marketing?
John, you want a job as a salesperson? That was great.
What I don't know is, because you're doing this every day in your sales organization, is where's the marketplace on
Yeah.
this and progressively understanding that as a dynamic?
There's a legacy challenge in the industry, in the agency world, which is out of home has historically, decades ago, it was really, really difficult to plan and buy. Because there are hundreds of media owners and everything was offline and there was no data and there was no platforms. And so the agencies and the holdcos formed specialist agencies, people whose job was to understand out of home. It's what they did. They had their vendor relationships, they understood how the media worked, and it was a really, really important, smart move that in retrospect took out of home away from the core of the media agency and moved it over into a silo. And so the movement we're seeing in the marketplace is moving out of that silo and not being dependent upon these specialist agencies who are the buyers, partnering with them. They're critically important to our business, but also focusing on the customer, focusing on the strategists, focusing on the research teams, the digital teams, thinking holistically about the business and getting to that point where we can understand on a customer by customer basis what their problems are or what their opportunities are and how we can help. And so we've developed business directly with the client. One of our key business development guys is back in that corner there, right? We work with brands today that we didn't work with for years because we didn't wait for the buy to come from the buyers. We leaned into the brand to say, we need to understand more your business. So we're definitely seeing that. We're seeing more brands coming into the space because of all the dynamics that you mentioned. Programmatic is also a huge opportunity for us because it's an entirely new class of buyers that hadn't thought about out-of-home before. And now pretty much every digital out-of-home screen can be transacted programmatically. So it opens the door to new budgets, new buyers, new opportunities. But there's still a long way to go. I mean, the agency model, in my opinion, disincentivizes the agency to innovate. It's built around FTE models with customers where they're focusing on optimizing to their margin. And so I've had situations in the past where we've had direct client relationships where we've developed a great opportunity that we then bring to the agency, and the agency goes, I don't have time for this. I don't want to deal with that, because they don't get compensated based on spend anymore. They get compensated based on a number of FTEs. So we just helped ourselves by giving them a whole lot more work that they're not set up to do. The agencies need to be fixed for us to get even further.
So just I have to add on something. So the comment regarding creative or that people don't like ads, I don't think people don't like ads that don't speak to them or connect with them. So I think it's a really strong distinction we have to make is that if
I know that, and I agree with that 100%, because there's ads on, I'll talk about a progressive ad, and I really like, right, make your parents, whatever they
But John, that's an illustration, I think, of what we've all been talking about, because it's awesome from a billboard owner standpoint that people are doing that. It's better from a brand standpoint because that's our media, right? And that's demonstrating a passion and a connection to a brand that may be triggered by someone seeing a billboard, but what's really driving it is they like the MGM brand, or they like the talent that's included in it, or whatever it may be. That, I think, is the kind of reinforcement of everything we've been talking about here. If all you're doing is thinking about social or mobile or billboards, you're missing out on the bigger thing, which is consumers don't think about it that way. They think about the stuff that they see in the world, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Does it resonate with them? Is it relevant for them? And then what am I going to do? Because do you guys remember, it was only like 10 years ago where you had to put visit www.soandso.com in your ads, right? Well, we don't have to do that anymore because everyone understands how to find a brand on the web. I think that's a really good thing for all of us because it creates more of that connectivity between a mobile experience, a social experience, a real world experience.
Well, and I love your point about the consumer at the end there, and I think it's a good note for us all to end on since we have to wrap. But we are marketers; we have to think about.
We can keep talking.
Yeah,
right?
I know. We have to think about the consumer at the end of the day. So I love that we ended on that. Hope you all enjoyed the conversation, and hope you all can go enjoy some beverages and fun dinners here at the Cosmopolitan. And look forward to chatting with you all outside of this.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.